So we're going to call the regular governing board meeting on Tuesday, April 9th to order at 7 o'clock. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call. Let it be shown that all the board members are here. And Mrs. O'Brien?
I move that the governing board adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? None. Let it show that it is 5-0. Oh, did I touch your screen? All right, Mrs. Tweedy, would you like to begin our governing board reports? Oh,
Nope.
that was kind of a question.
I don't.
Say yes or no?
Oh, I don't have a report.
All right, so that was a yes and a no. All right.
I would just like to thank Representative Nancy Bartow and Frank Carroll and Ben Toma, who met with a group of us, Ms. Tweedy, myself, and some Deer Valley teachers, and also thank Deer Valley parent Heather Morgan, who organized it, and they sat down with us and discussed education issues, listened to our concerns. So it was a really great meeting, so I'd just like to thank them for that. I had a great time at Legend Springs in first grade today, so much fun. I'm going back tomorrow for the other two classes, and they're adorable kids, and it was a great morning. And that's it for my report.
Ms. Frank, if you would do me a favor, maybe extend an invitation to our representatives and legislators to come join a Tuesday night with us, maybe once.
I think we already have.
Oh, okay.
But we'll pester them some more. We meet with them every month, so
there's chocolate.
we'll pester them some more.
Agreed?
Well, last Friday, I had the honor to be a judge at Mirage Elementary School's No Excuses University pep rally. And if you haven't had an opportunity to go to one of those, it is probably the most amazing thing I've ever been at. To have hundreds of kids excited about school and about college and singing the university and college's fight songs and their chants and their cheers. It was really neat. It was very loud. But it was amazing, and the teachers had so much fun, and everybody bought into it. And one of the highlights for me really was the LSU Alumni Association had adopted one of the classrooms, and so she was there with the blow-up tiger and had given the kids T-shirts, and so just that extra step to encourage some of our kids to strive for excellence and to plan for their future and set some goals beyond, kindergarten, first, second, third, and sixth grade. So it was awesome to see. Just want to send out a congratulations to the Norterra Canyon PTSA. They received a $1,000 grant from the Arizona Diamondbacks Foundation and Chase to purchase baseball equipment for their school, which is pretty awesome. So they're going to be honored at the game on the 11th. And I had a iCount 2020 census meeting today for the city of Phoenix, and we discussed getting some different organizations and associations involved, and one of them was reaching out to the AEA, reaching out to ASBA, reaching out to WestMech, and making sure that everybody understands the importance of being counted in the 2020 census, because so much of our federal dollars for education come through whether or not people are counted. And so it's important. So there was a big media rally on April 1st because the census is April 1st, 2020. And so you'll be seeing more of that rolled out here soon. So thank you.
Is April 1st the best choice for a census? I'm just curious who picked that day.
I think you're just maligning the first day of that month.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I'm not the one who gave it the moniker April Fool's Day, just saying.
Which is why she said April 1st.
Not April Fools.
And today is National Unicorn Day, so let's go figure. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you, President Ordway. I returned recently from the National School Boards Association annual conference, and it was an honor to get to attend on behalf of Deer Valley as well as state of Arizona. There were a couple of highlights for me while I was there, and one of them was a young man named Shane Feldman, and he is the CEO of Count Me In, and they find ways for young folks to give back to their community and be involved and be organized or give back. But one of the other things that he talked about was a 2-year stint he did undercover high. And it was incredibly moving to hear about some of the stories where he was able to impact high school students. And the reason he did it was to go back and find out what it was like to be a teenager now. He is 26. He went back, I want to say, when he was about 23, which is amazing because there's all kinds of liabilities with that. But did it for 2 years. And some of the things that he talked to us about is that it's harder today to be a teenager than when he was a teenager, he says. And he says if it is harder for the teenagers, then that means it's harder for the teachers and it's harder for the parents. A couple of the takeaways, though, were that we as adults need to walk our talk. We need to tune in and be present. And to him, that meant putting down the cell phones, getting off social media, and then finally to empower our teenagers to make decisions and be on the right path. So it was really incredible. I haven't had the opportunity to go watch the Undercover High series, but I look forward to trying to do that. The other speaker that we got to hear from was J.C. Taylor with the Society of Human Resources and Management Association. And one of his big messages is that we are going to have a deficit of human resources. There are going to be more jobs for years and years than we have people coming out of our schools, and that we're not providing our kiddos with the soft or hard skills necessarily that they need. And what an incredible opportunity it is, I think, for our K-12s, not just our post-secondary, but to start working with business about what our curriculum needs to look like so that they come away. And one of them that meant a lot to me because I felt like this was a struggle for my kids was writing. That we don't do enough writing in our schools, and so I hope that we'll look at that, and maybe Deer Valley can start talking about working with some of our nearby business partners when we look at different curriculum. So that was really an incredible opportunity to hear from those speakers. The other thing, conversations with Kurt at Las Brisas and Park Meadows were incredible, as always. Had some good turnouts at both of those locations. Esperanza Fine Arts Evening was so amazing. The band played, the choir, they had an incredible glow-in-the-dark room with lots of arts projects in there. And lastly, I'll finish up with an invitation for Coffee with a Cop tomorrow evening at Jason's Deli at Metro Center. The Cactus Precinct Community Action Officers are there, and you're in Cactus Precinct if you're west of I-17. That doesn't mean you can't come if you don't live in that precinct, but it's an opportunity to meet maybe some of your fellow neighbors as well as some of the officers who are helping out in our community. Thank you.
So that leaves me, and I will wrap it up with, there have been a multitude of academic, athletic, fine arts, and not to leave out all the carnivals that we've been having. Too numerous to mention, all fun, all exciting, and all really worthwhile. Lots of soft skills being learned by the kids when they set up. and they try to sell their wares. So at this point in time of the year, we've got the staff and students on a great path to complete the rest of this school year on a productive, exuberant, and continue to get your work done mode. May 24th or 26th, whichever the day is for you, is going to be here before you know it. So don't let that time go away. We can always finish strong. And on another note, my Calling All Fairy Godmothers clothing for our gentlemen and ladies for the prom. I had a group of 5 of them there last night, and it was incredible. So I do thank the community for their support, the students for bringing their dresses back. And I think we're 2 proms down and 3 left in this district. So everyone continue to be safe. Thank you.
All right, my report was a little longer this time, so I'll try to give you a cliff notes. This might be a record. Sheila gave me all this stuff I've been working on. I didn't realize I've been busy this week, this last month. We had, obviously, if you follow me on Twitter, you probably seen 80% of it already. But it's National Librarians Day on Wednesday, so make sure to write a note to yourself. And this week is National Volunteer Week, so make sure you put that on Twitter. Make sure you do that way. The EFRG Day on the 19th at the Capitol. Again, that group is making an impact, and it's nice to be a part of it. As Deer Valley's been there, and really Jim Mignorino's plowed that trail for me to be able to jump in and help out there. Just got back from the SEL National Conference on Social Emotional Learning and have a lot to share with our team on that, so I'm working on that. And we are headed in the right direction. That's what I learned. And we'll be able to pick up some things from that. I did hit the 500th classroom this last week at Paseo Hills for my 500 classroom visits, and they did a Rube Goldberg theme and dunked the cookies in the milk. So that was the whole theme. All kinds of simple machines, and there were disasters with milk everywhere. So yeah, no, they were crying because then their cookies were mushy. Been a lot, as you were saying, a lot of fine arts and sports and stuff going on. I enjoy that part of it. And today, my last bit, I'm handing out Read 180 and Math 180 medals and certificates to our top 10 students. So be looking for that on Twitter as well. As I'll go find each student, surprise them. A lot of times most of the time they don't know. So it's in front of their peers. We give them a medal. Do a little spiel on them and their little speech written by their teacher of how awesome students they are, because growth is super important. So that's what we're trying to emphasize. And then last but not least, as we head to the finish line and you work on my eval, I want to throw out a crumb too that you entertain the concept of maybe doing a board eval. I hit this every year, so it's not news to you, but we have some data points already we have parent surveys, we have staff surveys. It'd be nice to kind of you folks to evaluate yourselves and to help growth, and maybe we can do a board retreat maybe this summer or something. So just kind of throwing it out there to chew on that idea, because it's always good to reflect and see how we can get better as a team. And so that's it from me. ASBA does have a tool that we can use if we want to use that tool. So chew on that. Let me know if you're interested. Maybe I'll talk to the board president about that as well.
Yeah, we could probably incorporate an evaluation and then set our goals.
Maybe do some board goals. All right, maybe this summer. So it gives you time to chew on it between now and then. If you want to do some evals, I would recommend it. Just my thoughts.
Oh, do we not have
I don't think we have any public comment.
Business?
Mr. Riglerino? He's back explaining something to Miss Moffett.
I think Dr. Galligan's going to give it then.
All right. Dr. Galligan,
Dr.
you're up.
Galligan is going to give the fiscal service report. Jim, did you want to watch that from the outside?
He's walking minus a crutch, so I don't know if that's a...
I apologize. Slight emergency. My moonlighting job is I get the answer now calls for emergencies, so apologize. We have 2 reports to share with you this evening, starting with the student enrollment report. And through the 141st day, March 27th, showing up just 0.2%. So that's a slight decrease over the last time I think we looked at the enrollment report. It's been as high as about 0.4, maybe 0.5 throughout the year. And just another note, it's after the 100th day, so any students that we increase at this point, there isn't any current year funding for those, but any students that we can retain into next year, obviously we would get funding for. But I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the enrollment report. Hearing none, I'll move on to the March financial report. The projected carry forward for as I said, March is right at $817,000. It's up a slight tick over last month, so month over month we're up about $17,000, and a slight decrease year over year. So we're about $890,000 a year ago. I just have my obligatory comment to share with you that when we bring the budget revision in May to you, we will be increasing the 2018-19 budget column because of the fact that we actually have more students than we originally projected, and we are receiving current year funding for that. So that's a positive thing, and we'll be bringing that to you at the next board meeting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the March financials.
I'm sorry, but we have none. Magnet School?
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests, this evening we will share our initial work in our exploration into possible magnet schools in the Deer Valley Unified School District. Tonight, our report will focus heavily on traditional schools, but we will touch on the idea of other magnet schools as well. So the what as I've defined for our presentation will be exploring these waters, specifically our traditional schools. And the why is we are looking to make sure that we remain competitive in various geographic zones of our district where we see declining enrollment. And the how the presentation will be tonight in our quick debrief. Okay, so some background information for you. So when I started this position in July, Dr. Finch had charged me with getting some momentum going with respect to a traditional school. He talked to me about the fact that some of our schools were declining in enrollment, and he also talked to me about the fact that there's been an increase in some of our charter schools and how some of these charter schools have a branding of traditional with them. And so with that, the ALS team began doing some work on this, and we started exploring and doing some research as far as what exactly is this notion of a traditional school and how many charters are out there that have this traditional branding to it in our area. And so with that, we took a look at the actual numbers of the charter schools. Mr. Miglarino has a report from the demographer that proved very helpful to us, that provided some information, and also looked at some of the demographic trends as well that we see in enrollment trends. We took some school visits. We had some balcony view discussions, I would call them, among the ALS team and cabinet. And then finally, we also did some parent survey, and so we'll share some of that data to you tonight. Okay, so when we look at some of the data with respect to our competitive environment, we can see that over the past 10 years, we've had an increase in the number of our charter schools that are located within our boundaries and around our boundaries, but are near to us. And so you can see that when we lump both of those categories together, that we've seen charters go from about 19 to about 30 over this 10-year time span. With the enrollment, you can see that our Deer Valley Unified School District enrollment has had a slight decrease over this same time, but you can see that the charter schools have increased about 2.5 times, almost 3 times with respect to their enrollment. So with that, we then identified some of our schools specifically, because we do know that some of our schools are busting, right? And so some of our schools are having lots and lots of kids and students are enrolling daily, but other schools are not. And so what you are seeing right now on the screen is a sampling of 3 of our schools that have had declining enrollment over the past 10 years. And so you can see that some started as high as over 900 and are declining some, and some were about at 600 and have had some decrease. So these are the same schools in this slide, but these are projected numbers. And so this is what the demographer says the enrollment will likely look like over the next 4 years. And so again, given those same 3 schools, you can see that 2 of those schools continue to decline in enrollment while 1 of those schools increases. And so that gave us an idea of some of the zones that we might wanted to target as we started thinking about where might these traditional schools go. Now, I do know that Dr. Finch has also put some of this information in the board update to you, identifying specific schools for this. Okay? So once we got some of our information, did some of our internet research, made some phone calls to some of these schools that have a traditional branding, we said we need to go do some visits. And so we had some field trips. So I had ALS manager Jen Miner. We had 2 principals from DVUSD accompany us. And so we visited 5 schools. And so you can see that the first visit occurred in mid-January. And so with our schools, in terms of how we selected them, we had various criterion that we looked at. So the first thing we wanted to do is we said we wanted to see both charter traditional schools and also traditional schools that are part of a regular public school district. The second criterion that we used is we wanted to see high-performing schools. And so our proxy or our indicator for that was to look at the A through F accountability rankings, and we selected schools that had an A. Our third piece that we looked at is we also wanted to see different types of traditionals. And so as we identified in our initial research, we saw that these traditionals were taking on a different branding. And so some identified as classical traditional, some identified as traditional, and that variety was there, okay, within these schools. And so we said, let's see a sampling of what these schools look like. So in that first school that you see, Candeo is a charter school, and that is a classical traditional school. And so we made a visit to there. We made a visit to Cheyenne, which is in Scottsdale Unified School District. So that is not a charter. That's part of a regular school district. And that school has been in existence for quite a long time, and it is a traditional school. We also visited Madison Traditional, which is in the Madison Elementary School District. And we visited Ward, which is part of the Tempe Elementary School District. And our final school that 2 of us visited was the ASU Preparatory School. Now, important to note, ASU Preparatory is not traditional per se, but what we did notice is that some of the traditional schools identified in our research were K-12 or were planning to go K-12, and some of those schools are also located within our district with respect to some of the charters. And so we said, let's take a look at a K-12 school as well so that we can see and get an idea of how folks are branding this.
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. In addition to those visits, we're part of the North Valley Education Consortium, NEVIC, and we spoke to a number of the same districts that Dr. Zerbach just met in one of our curriculum and assessment meetings. And so they also shared with us some of those common themes that we will find in a traditional school. So typically when you look at a traditional school, you're going to find Spalding for reading, you'll find Saxon math, sometimes with some variations, but Saxon math for the most part are the 2 changes in curriculum resources than what we would have typically in Deer Valley. And then core knowledge also appeared to be a huge focus for the sciences and the social studies. In addition, a general traditional school is going to be at least 1 grade level above. There's a feel that there is acceleration in those traditional schools for students in it and parents who have their children attend. When we look at some of those cultural items, those things that perhaps families look for in a traditional school, that would indeed include uniforms, obviously a strong parental involvement, the use of time for instruction, bell to bell, and some of the downsides that you might not think about would be there are limited supports for students who do have challenges in some cases, and then our parents have choice, and parents can choose to participate in the traditional school or choose to go to a different school. And then In each of the schools that Dr. Zerabach and team visited, there were wait lists. And when we talked with the leaders in the school districts in the North Valley Education Consortium, every single one of their traditional schools had a wait list.
Okay, so Dr. Galligan discussed some of the similarities that we found. So what was different among these schools? So the first thing that I mentioned before was this definition of traditional. So as I mentioned about Candeo, they are classical traditional, and so they were very much so in terms of the art, and it was a Renaissance art, and they really were strongly focused on core knowledge. They had a program that was based on rhetoric and logic, and they were very much highlighting those aspects of that curriculum. That went to, compared to, say, Madison Traditional, and that school had, and it links to Feeling Tone, sort of like a Catholic school feel. And so we had students, it was a same uniform that was across all of the students. It was very much rows that were across all the classrooms, even in the younger grades. The principal and some of the other folks that we met, they made mention of that. They said, yes, that is sort of a part of a tone that we're looking to have here and a feel at this campus. We also saw schools such as Cheyenne and Scottsdale Unified School District that you probably wouldn't know it was a traditional school if you didn't get more into the curriculum. And so those schools, they tended to feel more like, I would say, a regular school that most folks would think about. But again, in terms of the curriculum, they emphasized this accelerated learning, and that students were at least one grade level and sometimes 2 grade levels above with respect to where they currently are. Feeling Tone I mentioned a little bit already. That is linked to some of that Catholic school feel. Some had that very much the classic feel of the Renaissance. And then in terms of how they started, there were some differences there as well. So some of the schools had very much of this strong parent backing, this grassroots efforts that started the school. Some had a leader that had this vision of how this is how this school should be. That was the case of Candeo, and built that vision out for the school. Other schools started small and then wished they had were bigger. So in the case of Ward, that is actually somewhat of a small school in the Tempe School District, and said that they had wished at the start they had maybe thought bigger so that they could expand more to that. So again, some differences there as far as these schools, and then in the prior slide, some of the similarities.
Good evening, President Ordway, members of the governing board. So in order to get a jump start on kind of where our parents' thoughts were and get more input into how we might define a potential traditional school for us, we administered a survey. We had actually administered 3 surveys. However, all 3 surveys were probably 95% identical. But we administered a survey in the north, a survey in the central part of the district, and a survey in the south and southwest part of the district. The only differences were the survey in the north had an additional question about a K-12 environment, because we wanted to dabble in that a little bit to see what parents thought about that. And the survey in the central had a question about Spanish immersion, because we wanted to get some feeling about that also. The survey was more or less designed to get their input on what they thought was traditional. We did go back and forth whether we should define a traditional and say, would you be interested in this? But it ended up eventually saying, let's not define what a school would be for us, because we want their input into defining that school. So the first question on the survey actually was, would you send your student to a traditional school in your area, with the option of yes, no, or maybe I'm not sure. If they answered yeah, maybe I'm not sure, or yes, they went on to look at the items about traditional schools to see what they were. So the first question on the survey, and the first item up here, correspond, and over 80% of the respondents said maybe or yes to the idea of a traditional school. I say over 80%. It was 83% was the lowest one, and then another one was at 87%, another one was at 93% said either yes or maybe we would do that. Sample size has varied. The survey's only been open for a week, and it's still open, but sample size has varied from 72 to 165 so far, between low and high. The second item on here, these are some of the things that they selected. They're shorthand, but class size, excellent learning, and high expectations for behavior. Interestingly, were in all of the survey's top 5 results. So those were kind of popped out as probably, hey, this is something important across all areas. The other interesting thing was at the bottom of the list was bus service, uniform, citizenship, curriculum, bell-to-bell, and homework. Bell-to-bell meaning bell-to-bell work in the classroom all the time, less parties and free time, and then homework. And we get to use the term least prioritized because they weren't necessarily unimportant to these people. They just weren't in their top 5. They were to choose their top 5 things in this survey. And finally, the question that we asked for the central, does that say 1 on that, Gary? Basically, the central area, for all of those that answered maybe or yes, 75% of them said Spanish immersion would be important, at least somewhat important or extremely important. In addition to that, the school in the north, when we asked them, the ones that said either maybe or yes, they would send their student to this school. The next question said, if this was a K-12 school, would you do it? Interestingly, over half of them, 52% of them said no, they would not. So although they might have been interested perhaps in a traditional school, if it was a K-12 environment, my gut feeling is, or actually and supported by the data, says they probably wouldn't do that.
Okay, so this next slide presents a very, very, very draft timeline of what a rollout might look like. So in 1920, you see that there would be perhaps a plan for a soft rollout of a traditional school. And again, that would be planning during that 1920 school year for an implementation of a soft rollout in the 2021. And so that's what you see in that second purple box in 2021. Also, you see it says the new magnet school perhaps in there in 2020, 2021. And that would be the school in the central area, the new school that we are looking to open, and then also the planning for perhaps future magnets that could be opened in 21, 22, or beyond.
Good evening, President Ordway, members of the board, and Dr. Finch. We spent some time looking into some potential magnets and some ideas that are trending around our state and around the nation, and also based upon the data that Dr. Smith shared with you. And some of the ideas that we saw were the traditional school, which Dr. Zerback has spoken about tonight, Spanish immersion. There's different ways of doing immersion programs at school, whether it's partial immersion or full immersion, so we spent some time talking about that. There seems to be quite a few regions and charters that have world language magnet schools. So, for example, one of those programs has a trilingual program. So in kindergarten, the students take 3 languages, and then the parents or the child decide which language they would like to participate in from 1st through 5th grade. And then in 6th through 8th grade, they pick up a 3rd language through their specials classes. So that was just an idea, something that we had seen in a couple of different areas. We also took a look at some of the performing arts magnet schools, noticing that there are not a lot of performance art magnet schools in the North Valley, and seems to be some interest in that. And the last area that we took a look at was computer science, coding immersion type of magnet school. So we're just in the initial stages of exploring, but these were some of the ideas that came out of our research.
So our final slide takes us to next steps, and as it says, items to consider. So if I did just kind of a quick summary of these items. So some important concepts and ideas to think about are going to be boundaries and what happens with those. How will we make connections to our middle and high schools if this happens at a K-6 school? How might modernization factor into this? Of course, cost is always a factor that we need to take into consideration. Staffing is huge. Also, if we did do this with staffing, what PD would need to accompany it? And then also, lastly, with our parent input is how would we continue to do this and gathering more parent input, more parent ideas about what are some of their hopes and wishes about any schools that we have in the future. Thank you. So I think that rounds our report out for this evening on our exploration of the magnet schools.
Are you ready for questions?
Sure.
You could start with one if you let everyone else get one.
I just have one
Okay.
question. Putting this here, is this a discussion item or are they just, okay, I didn't understand because you put it under report, so, okay. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Is that your question? Oh, you just want to know if you could ask a question?
Well, yeah, because it wasn't on a preview or a discussion item, so I wasn't sure if they were just telling us about this.
It's a report, so you could ask questions and give them further ideas to
Okay.
Yeah, feel free. The I think our point of and as I mentioned in Friday updates in the past, and I've talked about this the day I walked in, about being more customer friendly, for lack of a better word, and appealing to different audiences that are out there. They actually took it a little further than I was even thinking. So, thanks to the team that did some digging on this idea. And the reason why we actually started asking the questions in the zones was to give us a general idea if we're on the right trail. And I found that some of that data very interesting. I didn't know that that's how that feedback would come back. So, and it's pretty decent feedback, because you think in most of those locations you're looking at 600 to 800 families that are answering that question, and if there's 150 answers, that's decent feedback. So I learned a couple things as well, and so probably we could accelerate it. We could, as you know, I'm a plan guy, so I like to chew on it a while, but we could even start rolling for next year. Obviously not an actual implementation, but learning more, doing some PD, those kinds of things in different zones. Obviously, we have a modernization coming up at one of our schools in the south. We also have building of a school in the middle, in the central zone. So those can be variables in our discussion. So I would encourage you to ask any questions that you're thinking, because I'd like to kind of get a temperature where you're at. Yes.
So looking at the graph of the schools that had the declining enrollment, and a couple things that occurred to me is, that decline could have been due to students moving to charters. It could have been due to the fact that a new DVUSD school was built nearby. So, for example, the school where I taught, Copper Creek, long before I got there, I heard they had 9 third-grade classes, and then when they built Sierra Verde and opened that school, a lot of the kids that were in that neighborhood moved over to another school, and they were down to 4 third-grade classes. So, and also aging neighborhoods, those are all factors. So in looking at the magnet program, are you hoping to redistribute students from overcrowded schools in DVUSD to under-enrolled schools? Are you looking to bring students in from neighboring districts, or some combination of that? I'm assuming the goal overall is to increase enrollment.
Yes, that's a great question. That is actually at the heart of why we're doing it. I'm going to jump off your thoughts there, because you're on the same path I am. We know in our southern zone that we are aging out. That's what our demographer report tells us. We also, our southern schools, we have a checkerboard right at the very bottom of the district that can draw from the south as well. And we actually Mr. Migliorino and I sat in front of a computer and showed the kids that we are currently pulling from the south, from Washington and our neighbors to the east and west, to that zone. So it is happening as we speak. So I think it's both. I think in the central, it would be pulling students or attracting students to redistribute them better in concert with obviously our boundary work. I think in the north, I think we have even more charter influence in the north, so more of a magnet approach might be better there versus a traditional, or maybe a two-prong approach, maybe traditional with X, a double attractor, because the competition's so stiff up there. In particular, the one school in the center of the Anthem town, for lack of a better word. But so I think the answer to your question is yes to all the above, but each is dependent on the zone. I think each zone has a different flavor, and each zone has a different need. So I don't know if I answer your question there.
So if I can just make one more comment. So I think it's really important to find out that if you're putting a magnet school, I mean, this may be a big duh to everybody, but if you're putting a magnet school in a community, that you're putting something there that they want. I just remember when I was employed in the district, there at one point the tagline or the selling feature was Deer Valley, we've got what you want. And so every school had sort of a different focus. I know we had 2 core knowledge schools. Copper Creek became a highly effective teaching school, and a lot of money was spent. Copper Creek is no longer a highly effective teaching school. I don't know what happened with core knowledge at Greenbrier and Bel Air, but it all sort of fell apart. And a lot of money was invested in those programs that didn't come to really result in anything but continued declining enrollment. So I guess those are just my thoughts from historically what I've seen happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think
Don't repeat that.
The pendulum, yeah, it does swing in education. We know that too. You're correct. I think you can go overboard, and that was kind of my point to the team, is that I only want one in each zone or limited in each zone for that very reason. I don't want every school to have a niche per se, and if you don't have this niche, you can't exist. So it looks like from my chair, when I sit with the NEVIC crew, the superintendents of like size, they all have it. So it may be a slice of the pie that we're missing this traditional concept. So that's what was the birth of it.
Okay.
But you're on the right trail. I agree.
Thank you.
Agreed.
I just a quick thought, and I don't know if you've reached out to our staff members to see kind of what their thoughts are as far as traditional magnet programs. I know that every teacher, one of the classes that we had to take was philosophy of education. So we all, decided what was important and why we were going into teaching. And so some philosophies that teachers hold might be more traditional or might be more STEM centered or, technology centered. So it would be interesting to get their feedback, because obviously we want to make sure that we have teachers that buy into whatever we decide we're putting at whatever school. I would hate to do a fine arts school and then we not have enough fine arts teachers to fill that.
Brian?
Thank you for the report. Very in-depth and much more information than I had thought we were going to get this evening, so I do appreciate that. The fact that I think Deer Valley sits in a spot where we have 30% of our students going to charter schools or other schools other than our own, I'm excited about the opportunities to present to our families and our communities to bring in traditional or immersion, some options other than a regular neighborhood community school. So that is very exciting. I support this idea. I have lots of questions, I think, for maybe a study session, or maybe I send them to you surrounding some of the comments about what others are doing and then how that looks for us. I think the timing is wonderful, but I think boundaries are a huge question with busing and how we get kids where we're getting them, and the parental support and the supports to other kiddos. So I'll send those all to you, and then look at maybe when we have a study session down the road when y'all think it's appropriate. But thank you, and I'm super excited about making some changes in the district and giving more options to our families.
If you have questions, that would be great. Email them to us. That'll help guide us too to look for more angles maybe that you're interested in.
Dr. Zerbeck, I'm interested in aligning, if we were to do pre-K 6, and then you've got middle school, or maybe you have a K 8 and then high school, because we have our signature programs in the high schools, and not all of the 7th and 8th grade exploratory specials, preparatory, whatever we're calling them at this moment, not all of them align or give them a taste to continue. So if we have the super fabulous magnet school that is coding, we want to make sure that the next step after grade or 6th grade, we have something that would match that, and they don't have to leave because they're already going to be ahead of whatever it is we have in our What is that called? Vertical alignment, right? Oh, yes, I got it. Okay. Anyway, I think that should be an important part of what. Yes, Ms. Tweedy.
I just had two data requests. Could we see the survey results with the no's or the yeses and no's and maybe separated from each other? Because I interpret maybe as a neutral response, not an affirmative response. And the slide where it was discussing how many charters we have in and around our boundaries, could I have more information on that and what the mileage was to be considered around or close by as opposed to within our boundaries? Like how we determined what was included.
We also don't have privates on there as well.
Yeah, I just
We
want
could
to
add
know,
that
like, I
too.
mean, around, does around
add
mean
that for you.
30 miles? Does around mean
yep.
2 miles?
Usually
What does
a mile
around
or
mean?
so outside of where. We can get you that. We should add the privates too, probably too.
Okay, I would just appreciate. So those were my two questions, and then I guess my third question: if part of the purpose of the school is to track new enrollment, do we have any way to survey people who aren't enrolled in our district to see if they would be likely to send their student?
Yeah, not really. We have access to parental emails. That's it.
There's no
unless
way
we
to
did like a
even-
community survey.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because
just leave it out there and put it on our website or something.
well, I think we'd have to seek it out. I don't think people that aren't enrolled in our district are going to come to our website and take a survey.
Yeah, I don't know how we would do that. You can probably buy a service that would do that.
Dr. Smith, do you
we can
know?
investigate it.
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, I mean, the only way I think we could primarily do it is through a mail drop. You know, maybe a postcard with a URL on it, or maybe even a paper survey, and to a whole zip code or a whole combination of zip codes. So that's one potential if we wanted to consider it.
And then just one more question I had was, when we got our budget survey back, and it was prioritized by our community members, and they prioritized the salary, and then they prioritized the class sizes. So I guess within the timeline, I'd like to see how us addressing those priorities fits in with spending the money on the programs.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I forgot to say thank you. Thank you for doing that. I know that you have been working on it for several months, and so thank you for taking the time to go and visit and do all the research and compile and provide us with the data.
And then probably from a timeline from if you keep sending me questions, we'll keep digging. This is end of the year, obviously, so if we make any movements, it'll be super soft rollout type concept. So if we start leaning towards something, I think Ms. O'Brien's on the right trail, some kind of a study session later in the year, later in this school year, maybe in a couple months after we do some more digging on your questions that you might have, and then start talking about options. So that's kind of timeline-ish. Hopefully by summertime, make some decisions what to do next.
Mrs. O'Brien.
When will the survey be closed? If it sounded like it's still open.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, we had planned to leave it open for 2 weeks, so it would be the end of day Friday, this Friday.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions for us? That's a great response. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mrs. O'Brien, do we have any public comment?
President Ordway, we do not have any public comments this evening, so
On.
we will move on to the Certified Performance Pay Plan. I recommend that the governing board approve the Certified Performance Pay Plan for 2018-2020.
Second.
Questions? Discussion? Explanations? Report?
President Ordway, members of the governing board, I do have a very short slideshow. It's very similar to the last one, but since the last one was so sloppy, good to me, I thought I'd give it another shot. So the plan is the same as the plan that's in place this year. Here's the performance pay committee members again. These components are split into 3 areas, and these now are the correct percentages: responsibility / PD hours, evaluations at 50%, and school letter grades at 25%. So ultimately, The reason the committee went with this last year and we stuck with it this year is it puts 75% of the whole plan right in every individual certified teacher's hands. And then, of course, school letter grades is a cumulative effort of all of those teachers. Here's the correct payout matrix now for the evaluation piece. Again, it's 50% on the standards 1 through 6 of their evaluation. The teacher becomes ineligible for this component if they receive 3 or more developings or they receive an ineffective. I did do this little sleight of hand on this chart. You have a different number on that fourth column where it says they earn 60%. There was an error when I posted. It says 3.59 on yours to 2.4. It's 2.59 to 2.4. But now you can see how they earn 100%, 85%, 60%. If they're below 2.4, which effectively is the same thing as having more than 3 developings, they don't earn anything.
Bless you.
This is the school letter grade matrix. As you remember, we take the percentage of our schools that have a B or higher letter grade. If it's greater than 70%, you get all of it. Every teacher gets an equal proportion and gets all of it. If it's between 50 and 69, it's 75%. And below 50, we would not give any of that money out. And it would roll over into next year. And then just the same slide that ended this last time. We're prepared for communication and would like the board to approve this plan. Thank you.
I have a question. What is the communication plan if we approve this? How is it going to be rolled out?
The committee agreed to decide now for a couple years in a row to wait till after evaluations and performance pay is posted this year. And so very late in the year, we will do one set of communication, and here's the plan for next year. But most of the communication then will begin when teachers come back, or remember, here's the plan, here's the forms and where they're posted, and here's where the plan's posted, actually, on the HR portal page. And then also there are forms to help them track their hours of professional responsibility and professional development, et cetera, et cetera.
The reason I ask that question is every year you will hear from percentages of employees that they had no idea. No one told me. I didn't know that. How could you do this? On and on and on. So I was wondering where the responsibility is lying, and it was I don't know how many people on the committee, but everyone agreed to whatever this communication plan is.
President Ordway, yes, for those components, we also agreed to bring it to pre-K-12, first pre-K-12 of next year. And so with the hopes that'll roll down somewhat. We have used Deer Valley Voice in the past, so it all comes down kind of in my head whether people are going to read the Deer Valley Voice and whether people are going to ever go to the portal. And while the portal is a much less dirty word these days, for some I think it still is not a desired place to go look for stuff.
Well, I'm just saying, whatever your communication plan is, it would be awesome if it was enticing for people to want this information.
President Ordway, thank you. We'll
Money
try
is
to,
the
we'll try to spice it
money's
up.
the ultimate enticer.
Well, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But
So-
anyway, thank you for your report.
I was just going to suggest to follow on what you said, Mrs. Ordway, that perhaps it could be communicated out at a staff meeting. Like you've got a PowerPoint that the principal can run through or the administrator can run through, and everybody hears it at a staff meeting.
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, I think that's a great idea. We can work on having something for the administration to take back, and boom, they just have to show it. That'd be a great idea.
It could just be the PowerPoint you showed us. It just shows them what the...
Could have little cheat sheet cards that we could all keep in our back pockets, too. Just saying. Anyway, thank you.
I think Ms. Tweedy had a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Since this plan's real similar to last year's, I just was curious, what percentage of people earned their performance pay last year? Was it most?
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, this plan is very similar to this year's plan.
That's what I
Of course,
meant.
I don't know that. And it's somewhat similar to the plan last year. And it's like a little over 1% for a combination of reasons. Some didn't do their performance, their professional development, or professional responsibilities, so they lost that piece of the plan. There was probably a handful, maybe 8, that were ineligible for the whole thing because of either terminating their job or discipline, formal discipline, etc. So it's a handful basically, but I give you the exact number.
But it's in the high 90s, the people that are earning their pay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
President Ordway.
Yes, Mrs. O'Brien.
Dr. Smith, could you just remind us for the record what is the responsibility and professional development hours piece of that? What does that involve or entail?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, sure. This is the employee has to collect, a full-time, full-year employee has to collect 20 hours of either professional responsibilities that help the school or professional development outside of their working day, both of those outside of their normal working day for what they're getting paid for. And the only other twist on that is it's prorated if you're a part-time FTE or you start other than some time at the start of the school year. If you start at the end of the beginning of the second semester, it's prorated. You only have to get 50% of those hours.
Thank you so much for that.
No more questions? No more discussion? With that, all those in favor say aye.
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 There are 5 ayes, which means there are no nays. So we have passed that.
Consent agenda. I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 6A through 6L.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone against it? No. So we're passed on that. Next.
I didn't see the
I would
electronic.
say, do we have to
pop
vote
up.
on that one?
Yeah, we have to vote on them.
Are you ready to move on? Employee travel. I move that the governing board approves all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCCE.
Second.
Discussion?
I
Yes, Ms. Frank?
I had sent some questions to Dr. Finch regarding Trip O, which was to the Solution Tree Conference. So if you could just maybe kind of explain where the funding came from, and also I know that there was a change in the amount, so I think it'd be good for the community to hear that.
Yeah, I think the new amounts are currently in there. So I think I'm guessing here that the first amounts that you saw were best educated guess, and then the actual cost came in. But that's the latest information they got. But maybe Dr. G can fill in the crack there on that Trip O, or Mr. Migrino.
Oh,
No, it's about Solution Tree.
President Ordway, members of the board, just speaking about the trip itself, I think there was, from the original question, I think there was an adjustment to some of the dollar amounts. I think they were inaccurately stated initially, and the funding source for the trip is out of their facility rental, one of the cash accounts at the school that they're using for professional development for the staff itself. As to the actual conference and that, I think Dr. Galligan could probably speak to that better than I.
Go ahead, Dr. Galligan.
President Ordway, members of the board, this is a PLC training conference through Solution Tree. It's just one of many that are offered across the country and also in Arizona. If you remember, in one of the most recent updates, Dr. Chunis shared that in I believe it was late February, March, we had between 200 and 300 of our teachers go to the PLC conference here in Phoenix. So our schools make some decisions. When you are sending that many folks during the school year, you can incur sub-costs, but when you send folks during the summer, you don't have sub-costs, but you have travel costs. So it's just a matter of determining priority of, do we keep teachers in front of kids and then use the opportunity in the summer. But the conference that is referenced here is that professional learning community and how we perform, teacher collaboration, And really it, it helps everyone hear the same message at the same time. So the movement that the principal at Norterra Canyon is wanting to do is to build that momentum going into next school year, where we have the Professional Learning Community Fridays.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. And my main question really that I sent to Dr. Finch was regarding the money which is coming from the school's cash account, and then also the cost, which I appreciate you updating with the more accurate cost. And I don't know why Solution Tree won't come to Phoenix for a conference in, say, July. I don't know.
Or anyone else for that matter, right?
Today might have been
Thank
an
you.
indicator. 100.
So is that it on discussion?
100, that's nothing.
That's nothing. We're just getting warmed up.
Just a general question. So is all this travel, regardless of what account, getting included in our yearly travel budget?
Now you're making me rewind my brain. Mr. M would know this answer.
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, yes. So we are keeping track. This is actually outside of the M&O fund, but we are keeping track of all the other funds as well. So yes, we are keeping track of all the travel expenses.
Okay, could you send us an update on that, where we are? Like next up, not the second. Thank you.
Well, I think we can vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 No nays. So there we go. Oh, 7B.
I move to approve professional travel for the superintendent to attend the AASA Legislative Advocacy Conference on Education in Washington, D.C. From July 8th through 10th of 2019.
Second.
Dr. Finch?
If you think it's hot here, July 8th, it's twice as hot there. This is one I've been referring to again, and didn't go last year. I went. It's really connecting with your Washington legislators, and as you know, part of my contractual PD dollars, that's where the fund will come from. But it's to develop relationships and impact the national legislative front. So I did it 8 years in a row for the state of Michigan, and I need to start sharpening my skills with the Arizona crew to make an impact for Arizona. So as you know, that's something that I'm interested in, and I think we can make a difference and do it here in Arizona with our local legislators. But I think we need to, unfortunately or fortunately, start connecting with our national Arizona legislators as well.
Well, if you're willing to put up with the heat and humidity in Washington, D.C. in July,
It is
thanks for
miserable.
taking one for the team.
Yes, it is very miserable. But it's really very powerful to walk into their office on their turf. It's a plus.
Mrs. O'Brien.
Yes, I want to thank you for taking that on, because I think there are definitely issues at the national level that need attention, and I think there's no better way to do it than doing it on their turf, so they understand how important it is to our district for funds like ADA and some concerns with FERPA. So thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All
Aye.
those- 4 or 5. Aye. There are 0 people against it. So along to 7C.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
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 We're voting too
We're
fast
voting,
for
Sheila.
her.
We're sorry.
She's used to us arguing more.
Robust discussion. Robust discussion. Anyway, are we all done? Yep. Passes 5-0. 7D.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2019-20 Employee Benefit Committee recommendation.
Second.
Who wants to give this presentation? Jim?
I was kind of hoping you were going to just call for the vote, maybe.
Well, I could, but
Nice.
I wanted to give you an opportunity.
Nice try, Mr. McLaurin.
Yeah.
Your grin gave it away. You had them until you grinned.
Yeah, sorry. President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch. So we are pleased to present the benefit recommendation. The benefit committee has worked, I think we had an extra meeting that we wedged in this year. I want to give special recognition to our new director of payroll and benefits, Chris Costanzo, who chaired the committee, and all of the members of the committee that you can see here that grapple with a great deal of information. I think we intentionally don't tell them how much fun information we're going to share with them, and then when they're committed to the committee, we keep them there as long as possible. Some of the committee members actually are in attendance, so I wanted to recognize them for their time and commitment. And some of them have served on this committee for a number of years, so they bring a lot of expertise, not just as employees that in the district, but those that have become, quasi-experts on benefits themselves. I mentioned we had squeezed in an extra meeting. Here are the 5 meetings that we held going back to November, and we covered a lot of ground and looked at a lot of information. I think what's worth noting is that last year we intentionally did not increase our rates because we didn't want to dilute the salary raises that we were able to give for the first time in a long time to employees. But unfortunately, our claim experience and medical inflation, continued. So it made it a little bit more of a challenge for us because we had a little bit of residual from that decision a year ago that had to be taken into consideration. So we started off with a 13%, just over 13% renewal from the actuarial. That's about a $3 million expense for us. Again, a portion of that, or at least 6.5% of that, is from the prior year that we took a pass on, and we were able to take a pass because we were self-insured and we have some reserves to be able to offset that. There was a lot of very good discussion amongst the committee members regarding which options to take a look at to address that. I mean, a $3 million expense to our M&O increase would be a significant cost, and we were fearful it would almost eliminate the possibility of a salary increase for employees if that was to stand on its own. So we looked at some plan design changes and then tried to minimize those to impact the least amount of people, and something that made sense comparing our plan design to other districts as well. So I'll just run through these quickly. So increase the deductible on the PPO plans by $250 from $1,000 to $1,250. The family deductible, so that it follows suit, would go from $3,000 to $3,500. One of the probably the most significant changes is the second bullet, so that we would no longer cover out of network services. We're dealing with a national plan with United Healthcare, so there are plenty of options that are available, but we continue to see very opportunistic services being billed as out-of-network expenses, and this allowed us to get some of the most increased savings on claims by no longer covering this. This is going to require a great deal of communication to our employees so that they verify that they are seeing an in-network provider, or this could get rather costly. So we think we have great utilization in network now. So we have a few people that are taking advantage of out-of-network benefits that we need to make sure find a different provider that's in network during the open enrollment process, and there'll be plenty of time for them to make that transition between the end of the current plan year, which is June 30th, and when the new plan would come into effect on July 1st. Kept all the other deductibles, out-of-pockets on the medical plans the same. And we changed the short-term disability provider to Sun Life Financial due to some favorable rates. Changed the life insurance provider to Sun Life as well. Changing voluntary vision coverage to a United Healthcare Vision pooled plan. We're currently with a company called VSP. Adding Cigna Dental DHMO to replace the Sun Health DHMO plan that we have, and they were able to guarantee us a 2-year rate for making that change. Changed the Delta Dental plan to a pooled plan that Valley Schools offers, and providing a 4-tier plan for our employees. Currently on the medical side, we have just 2 tiers, employee and family. On this, with this change with Delta Dental, we'll be able to offer 4 tiers, employee, employee plus spouse, employee plus children, and finally the 4th tier family plan. And then this is something that I wanted to give special recognition to our human resources folks, especially Ms. Moffett. We are going to add an employee assistance plan for the benefit of our employees. Unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in the need to support our employees beyond just what we're capable of being able to help them with. And this would be able to provide 6 sessions for free for our employees per occurrence, that they could get additional help from professionals. And this ranges from all sorts of types of needs that our employees might be in need of receiving. And then adding a privacy security coverage. We're seeing a lot of identity issues with just the nature of the world today. And this is a benefit that we would offer free to all of our employees, and there is an opt-out plan. There are some people that believe that don't believe in these types of coverages, so we would give them the option to opt out of that. And then all other employer-paid benefits would remain the same. With all those changes, it would require an additional $1 million worth of M&O dollars to be able to cover the anticipated claims. Again, we are self-insured, and we would be relying on $1.2 million worth of reserves to be able to make sure that we have enough allocated to be able to cover the expected claims for next year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, just quickly, pending your approval tonight, we are kind of on a short timeline. We do like to open up the open enrollment, especially when we have a major change like the out-of-network services no longer being covered. We want to give our employees at least 3 weeks to go through the employee benefit open enrollment period. We would open that up on April 22nd and keep that open through May 10th. We try not to have that interfere with too much of the end of the year activity, end of the school year activities. That is the current plan, and there would be a communication piece, obviously, in terms of rolling this out. Now I'll open it up to some questions.
Ms. Tweedy?
I just had, when we use the 1.2 million in reserves, is that going to change our risk level from moderate to high, or will we stay moderate?
President Orway, Ms. Tweedy, that's a great question. So you're referring specifically to the Auditor General District Spending Report that assigned us a moderate risk for our balances within our own funds. And the Valley Schools reserves are in reserves in trust in our name and don't show up on the financial information that the Auditor General uses to assess our risk. So so the long and short of it is no, it won't. But it also is a very prudent use of reserves that we have. And the experience that we receive changes from month to month. We're actually experiencing, I need to knock on some wood here, we're experiencing a good month the last 2 months in terms of claims experience. And that can change rather quickly, in fact. But we think that currently we have about $13 million worth of reserves within Valley Schools at this point in time. How we finish this year, we did plan on using about $1.3 million in the current year of reserves. I don't think we're going to use all $1.3 million of reserves based on the claims trajectory that we see today. But we know that we do have reserves, and it is a projection in terms of what we're trying to cover in terms of cost.
Okay, I feel better. I just want to make sure I wasn't getting ready to take a vote that was going to turn us red.
You look
Okay.
like you feel better. Anybody else have any? Miss Reed?
What is the communication plan to make sure that our employees know what's happening?
President Ordway, Ms. Reed, so the communication plan hasn't yet been finalized, but it will start with multiple modes of communication, and we'll kick it off with the Deer Valley Voice that goes out to all of our employees. And then our payroll and benefit department has a couple different options to have their bookkeepers that are assigned to their schools and departments actually try and personalize what the message might look like. So it may be different for, let's say, our transportation staff that don't have email, are more difficult for them to access email than like a school staff member who, is almost continually looking at email throughout the day. So we'll tailor it to the needs of the school or department to be able to make sure that that information is available. And then we open up a couple lab settings where people can come in and complete their open enrollment with the assistance of personnel from the payroll and benefit department. And then we've also used, although I don't know that we've considered this for this year, but we also used some video recording to be able to walk people through the changes as well. There would be obviously some printed material that would be posted on the portal as well. That's more a repository so people can reference it. The communication, we really want to be in front of people to be able to communicate these changes, and then we keep a repository for people to go reference the information at a later point in time as they're completing the process of open enrollment.
Ms. Frank?
I don't know if this would be practical, but I know our open enrollment in the county is coming up. So we get the emails, they do workshops, and then they send out the PowerPoint, and that lives on the hub where everyone can access it. One thing that they do, and again, I don't know if this is practical or if it would be even financially feasible, but they send out in the mail, I got my letter saying this is when open enrollment is, and here's what your selections were last year. Because they do somewhat of a passive enrollment where if you're not changing anything, it just rolls over to the next year. But I know I appreciate having right in front of me, here's what you did last year, here's what the cost is. And that definitely, it reaches people. So again, I don't know if that's something that's feasible or something we can even afford to do, but I think it's a great communication tool for employees. So just throwing it out there.
So not to be rainbows and butterflies, but I've seen some skirmishes on social media about, the district's going to raise benefits and a little bit of lowering teacher morale, just kind of another thing, and so specifically the people that were in the committee that went through and looked at the facts and approved this and tried to come up with a plan that would be the most win-win for our district and for our employees. It's just my ask that you would share accurate information with them and try and explain how we got here. And it would be great if in some sort of the communication piece it would explain a little bit why we chose these options in very plain, simple, easy to read language, so that it doesn't look like, that the board doesn't care about our employee benefits, and that, that we're trying to, that it is a win-win, so that we're trying to do something that is beneficial for everybody down the road.
Maria, I'm really bad at the game that you want me to play right now. I'm seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. President Ordway, Board
Maria
Member Reed,
Leyva, are you speaking,
There
Maria
he goes,
Leyva?
there he
Could you
goes.
say
yes.
Maria Leyva
Okay,
speaking?
I'll get up on the microphone. So it is communicated. Our process within DVEA is that we loop this out to our DVEA leaders, site leaders. We discussed this at every point. They're updated from the committee, and they did have input as to, and they fully understand. We went through the whole discussion process before we go back to the committee and say that we did have input. They loop it out, we assume, to we stand up at their staff meetings. They present it to their schools. And that's our communication piece as representatives on the committee. So it's not done in isolation, that there's always feedback. And Jim mentioned the additional meeting to give us time to process and loop it back to our constituents, if that helps.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for doing that.
Awesome. Are we ready to take the vote?
No.
Oh, Mrs. O'Brien, did I not look at you? I'm sorry.
She forgets to look to the left every once in a while, but that's all right. So I just want a verification then that for this particular committee, we had an all thumbs up on these changes, Mr. Miglerino?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, yes, we did.
Awesome.
No sprained thumbs?
No,
sorry?
no twisting,
Sprained?
no sprained thumbs. And then my last question is on the EAP or the Employee Assistance Plan, is that at no charge, those visits to? So if an employee or their family member needs to use it, is there any kind of charge for them?
Ms. Ordway, President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, pardon me, there is no charge to the employee, but there is an expense to the district to participate in the plan.
Okay, and I want to say kudos for bringing in this for our employees. I do appreciate that, and thank you for all the hard work to the team members.
I was going to brag about that as well, so put Miss Moffett on the spot. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all, or because this is a big deal. This is part of our social emotional learning plan for the entire district. We focused a lot on the students. Ms. Moffett said, hey, around the neighborhoods, different districts, they're also doing it with employees. So maybe we can give her a minute to talk a little bit about how she came to this conclusion and what she learned.
Thank you, Doc. Working? Yes? Thank you, Dr. Finch. President Ordway, governing board members, we did spend a good amount of time researching and looking into different options as far as an employee assistance program is concerned. This actually is not something that is utilized as well as it could be in the area of education. So we did reach out to public service to look at fire and police because they have very strong support structures and fully understand what an EAP could do. Also, I spoke with districts that are part of our benchmark consortium. Many of them do utilize an EAP program like fire and police do. Through our ASPA organization, we did a little bit of benchmarking there as well, and they are eagerly looking at what we are going to do here and hopeful to follow suit. So what drove this to the front of our attention was really the need that our employees have, all employee groups. There have been a significant amount of our employees over the last 3 years that have been in human resources with very intense issues and situations where even life-threatening types of issues. And we are not trained necessarily to make the decision of whether or not someone might take their own life. And we need appropriate supports where we can be proactive to assist our employees in engaging in their work and being happy in their work and to take those distractions away. And that's what an EAP can assist in doing. Additionally, it helps us in making those decisions. And making the best decision when we have an employee in human resources that is disclosing to us that they may end their life that night, or they're just thinking about it, or they really weren't serious. It can be very difficult deciding what to do in those particular situations, and an EAP will assist us in those circumstances. So we're very happy that the committee was enthusiastic about this option, and should the board approve it, we're excited to roll it out next year.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 ayes. Next.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to consider, and if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds of the district and adopting certain post-issuance continuing disclosure procedures.
Second.
And I know you guys have been waiting all night, so come on and tell us about this.
President Ordway, members of the board, and Dr. Finch, we do have, we're very fortunate to have our bond counsel here, Mr. Jim Giel from Gus Rosenfeld. We also have Miss Megan Burke, who has recently changed firms. So she was wearing a previous logo on her attire, and now is working for a firm of Piper Jaffray. You may remember the name Piper Jaffray because it is the firm that we use for our tax anticipation notes. So we're happy to consider them as our bond underwriters for this last and final sale of the 2013 bond authorization. It is for no more than 53,600 and some odd $1,000. I should have that number at my fingertip. $53,670,000 is the maximum amount. We are contemplating a May sale for a number of reasons. The market is advantageous for those that are selling bonds right now. If you have any interest in buying bonds, probably not the greatest time to buy bonds. There are better times, I'll say. And that's why we're considering selling all the remaining authorization that is left. Also, with the consideration to build the new elementary school and the two modernization projects that we have left, both Hillcrest and Bel Air, as well as the summer projects that we have planned, we will need the proceeds of some of this. We think it's advantageous for us to sell this, the remaining authorization in one sale, as I mentioned, as early as May. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. I did want to recognize Mr. Giel and Ms. Burke, who are here, in case there are any additional questions.
Do you have a question, Ms. Tweedy?
I don't know where they are.
They're right there.
Oh, okay. Hi.
That's it. Do you have questions? Holy cow. Awesome. Okay. Did you want to say anything else, Jim?
Just if you won't run away at the end, I'll need your signatures pending the vote. We do have some originals.
Can't sale without a signature.
Alrighty then. I won't leave quickly. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There are no opposed.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the K-12 use of facility/field schedule for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Mr. Miglerino, did you have something you wanted to add, or was that Dr. Galligan who wanted to take this one?
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we are recommending no change in fee schedule for rentals and no change for utilities other than our media centers and our mini auditoriums. There would be a slight increase in those fees, which is a necessary increase. But for all other areas, no changes. It would be similar to what we had last year.
Ms. Reed?
I just had a question I had sent to Dr. Finch about where the fees that people who rent the facilities go to. Do they go back to the school, or does a portion go back to the school, or does it all just go back into the district?
President Ordway, Mrs. Reed, a portion of it remains with the campus and a portion of it remains at the district level. And this Thursday update will have the exact numbers for you.
Thank you.
I just want to weigh in too that this is one that I will like to tackle down the trail. But for now, we're going to continue on the same path until we decide to probably post-election. Post-election would give me a better idea of what we need to do to respond to our structure. I'm not in love with it, so just to let you know that it's coming soon to a theater near you. Probably next year, we'll be talking about maybe re-looking at this from the top to the bottom.
That sounds exciting. Anything else? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 ayes.
We're on 9.
Yep, we are.
Or,
now-
sorry, 8A, discussion item.
Discussion item. This is. Did anybody have anything that they read that they were not happy with? Change the order, take out? Is there no discussion at our discussion item?
Got nothing to say.
Nothing?
It doesn't happen often, I know.
So the next time that we meet, so what this discussion item is about is it's our board's opportunity to send our top five items to the Arizona School Boards Association for discussion during their legislative meeting in June. I believe that usually is held. That the legislative committee then comes up with.
Will you vote on it then next time or something, or in the future?
Yeah, we'll need to decide and vote. It'll be an action item at our next meeting, so we should have our top 5 that we'd like to present to ASBA, and we also get the opportunity to have 2, I think, like alternate ones.
Well, probably one of my biggest priorities is transparency for charters. Having them not having an auditor general report or reporting their spending. So that would be a high priority for me.
And just send them to Dr. Finch, and then we can.
Or have your top 5 ready for the next meeting, where we would put them all together to decide which ones, as a group, we decide as our top 5.
I'd like to see them before the meeting, though, because there might be similar top 5s, and then we won't have to spend so much time on something and be a little bit more efficient.
You want me to collect them, or are you going to collect them, or I'll collect them? Okay, send them to me. Sure.
Then they could.
Good idea. Good idea. Then I can send them out in a Friday update, maybe, or something.
The attachment is the current political agenda for this year.
So they can go off of that. Add and subtract.
It's a starting point. So if there's something,
or you can
add and subtract off of it.
right? You can add, subtract. Correct.
Sound fair? Good.
I can do that.
All right. Wow.
No charge.
Where are we? Oh, we're on number 9. Future meeting events. All read that. So I'm going to send against adjourning the meeting at 8:30. Meeting's adjourned. All
right.
those.
Don't we
Good
have
job.
to vote on that?
All those in. Oh, make a motion.
Wait, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All those in favor. Say
Aye.
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 Meeting's over.